And he would like to share with us his faith from what he derived from reading the book.
As I've only been reading the book for about 3 years, I suppose we'll get through it in probably a little less than 2 hours or so. When I first started reading the book, there was a phase that I knew that it was an epochal revelation, and nothing could possibly make it more epochal than an understanding achieved by more evolution. I began to realize that it takes a different kind of comprehension, a different thought process to understand so many things that are completely unfamiliar or are so new and different than anything we've ever encountered. A new mental process is required, but one that also is simpler than the unfamiliar things we're trying to get to know. Because it's so very easy to get up in a complex thought process. So when I started thinking about what it means to understand all things related to the Supreme, a few papers ago in our study group, I thought it takes a different mindset to understand a lot of this book. So with that in mind, I think that I'm first going to talk a little about what understanding is. Conversation begins to shift because everybody wants to relieve you of your lack of memory right then. And you want to relieve yourself too, but you don't want them to change the subject, and you're glad they did, right? Okay, so the key to understanding is related to appropriate prior knowledge connecting with what you already know now or what you're learning. But if it's incorrect, so if it doesn't fit right, there's a restructuring of knowledge when the understanding is incorrect. And he calls this integrative reconciliation. And so if we don't understand it and we establish a connection with prior knowledge, we'll begin to remember it. If we remember it, it's acquired then, it is brought to mind, and it is fit then into a schema. There are two types of relationships which help lend meaning to new knowledge. Adding new ideas to a schema and restructuring. It makes important changes to the schema but leaves what you already knew intact. And as we go, there'll be smaller changes to make. You might call that tuning, so that every scene things to fits together. So we finally have assimilation. When you have reconceptualized it, you might have significantly modified that schema so you understand or reconcile conflicts with the understanding that was former. So now you know something new, it's all clear. This kind of breakdown, I think, is really important to understanding the sometimes complex cosmologies and concepts in the book of Urantia, because if it's too unfamiliar, what prior knowledge do you have to relate it to? And so if any of us ever feel frustrated because of that, we don't have a prior knowledge connection, then remember that pretty soon, even though you don't understand what you're reading right now, 6 months from now, that will become prior knowledge. We will understand that without having to classify and archive our knowledge, we will know how to put it into practice so that it doesn't necessarily need definition. But they'll just be facts and they don't fit into anything. But if we remember to ask questions like Jesus did, people draw their own conclusions, and even though their understanding will be different than another person Jesus talks to about the same subject, it'll be an understanding peculiar to them, hence peculiar to their own success. And every piece of knowledge has kinds or parts. I knew it was the only book that I needed with other supplemental materials that complemented it. But when I started reading like that, I had to stop and read sentence by sentence, make phone call after phone call, because I had no prior knowledge to relate any of this stuff to. It fits, understanding a little bit of the Supreme fits into the whole understanding of how the Supreme itself fits into the spiritual order of hierarchy of various kinds of deities, both finite and infinite. There will always be more advancement to make, and that will never stop. And that's the wonderful thing about being able to get to know this book and get to understand what it means to be a child of paradise and to learn the mysteries of post-venalitor status. Thank you.